Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary Issues class. We are figuring out our technology once again. We have this new thing called the owl we are using. It looks like a little white owl sitting in the middle of the room recording us. And so we are.
Look like an owl.
It does look a little bit.
If you can see it from here, it does. It has like two eyes.
It's got
and a
eyes.
nose.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk today about ballot questions on
Only has
Colorado.
one eye though.
Only has one eye from that side. It's got two over here. Ballot questions for a few minutes, since there's only three on the ballot this time that are statewide. Lots of local races, but just three that apply to all of us. We won't take that long to do it. And then we're going to talk about Mr. Biden and all the things he's doing right now and plans to do. And so a good chance for us to step back and look at what's going on with the country and with him. So I think we'll spend most of our hour today doing that. But first, our usual announcements. Welcome to Zoomers there from Susan's in Toronto and Joe's across the street at the V. And Toby and Bob are nearby too. So yeah, Windcrest. Okay.
Where's Jim Watson?
I don't know where Jim Watson is. He'll come back to us. But please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. And we are recording this for future playback, of course. Other announcements. Christmas party, December 12, I believe, isn't it?
Right, and Lois and Keith Galloway have graciously opened their home, so we'll be going there. And we're gonna provide ham and drinks. And then I'm going to sit with a neighbor that's gonna teach me how to do Sign Up Genius. So I'm gonna have everybody just go on Sign Up Genius and sign what they want to bring, you know, for a side dish. That way we won't have a lot of like 9 green bean casseroles.
Or in the summer party, it was fruit. Everybody got fruit.
Right, so be aware that that's coming your way. Another thing, I want to put a plug out for the women's retreat. If any of you haven't thought about that, it's the first weekend in December, kind of an awkward time, but we kind of had to take that time. And it's a Friday night to Sunday noon. And I think it's $179 for 2 nights. It's at a little retreat center near Colorado Springs. And there are some
235.
Oh, was it 235? Okay, and there are openings still left. And Jolene, sorry,
Yeah.
are going to be the facilitators, and it looks to be a lot of fun. So if you're interested, there are applications at the information desk. So
There were 2 spots left.
Can you repeat that? It was hard to hear you a little bit, but just say it again. Can you just repeat it?
December, I think it's 3rd through the 5th. It's that Friday night through Sunday noon. And so anyway, a couple of spots left. And it'll be a lot of fun.
What is it?
Women's retreat.
Women's retreat.
Okay,
We
Karen.
missed the beginning of it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry, women's retreat. Thank you.
Just looking the other way.
Well, yeah, we need to
The
talk
owl.
toward the owl microphone.
Look at the owl.
Right. It's got a pretty good microphone, but need to speak up so it really catches us. Okay, good. Lots going on, of course. Any other announcements or things you want to share, movies you've seen or books you want to recommend to us that you're enjoying currently?
If you're not watching Ted Lasso, you need to be watching Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
That television series won a lot of Emmys here recently. It's very uplifting. It's fun to watch. It's easy to watch. There is some there's some cuss words. There's a lot of cuss words in it, but other than that, it's something that you can really get uplifted by. Makes you feel good about being a person. Yeah.
Is that on broadcast TV?
No,
It's on Apple TV, which is $5.99 a month. And it's really a good show about a soccer coach in England who uses kindness to coach his players instead of trying to be mean and tough. And as the star says, it's about kindness, which Americans are not always used to. So interesting. Gene, go ahead.
New release, Netflix. Colin Kaepernick, black and white. Did I say it correctly?
Mhm.
You'll never see hair again, quite like it's portrayed in this production, and particularly the young actor who plays him in his youth, but a completely a new unveiling for us as to the motivations behind Take a Knee, Kaepernick, and being a biracial background, the dilemma for such individuals. It was very illuminated, would you say, Mary? Yeah, very fine film. We certainly encourage you to see it.
Documentary on
Black
Colin
and white.
Kaepernick on
Black and white,
Netflix.
brand new release.
Black and white.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to let all of you know that, although Linda and I have gotten married on the 7th of October
How are you?
in 2019. We weren't married by a minister and we weren't married in a church. And the two of us want a marriage in a church with the minister.
Good.
Don't have a date yet. We just started planning for it. And I see a lot of faces that I recognize, and I'd like you to come and join us.
Well, thank you.
Well, yeah.
Congratulations. It'll be
Yes.
great. Tell us more about it when you got details.
Okay.
Okay. All righty, let's jump into the election. Of course, now this being an off-year election, there are few races, and as we know, there's only 3 statewide ballots that apply to all of us. And the rest are local races, city councils, school districts, things like that. So they were different for a lot of us. But let's go through these 3 propositions. And just simply, because they're worded very complicated, and so let's keep it simple for us. And just look at what they want to do and what the pros and cons are for them. So the first one is Proposition 119 would create an out-of-school program and increase marijuana sales tax to partially fund the program. A little bit more on exactly what it says, and I hope you all got the blue voter handbook. What a nice thing that they do to try and simplify this, and that's put out by the legislature.
We didn't have that. Did we?
And so this one says, 119 says, create the Colorado Learning Enrichment Program to help certain Colorado youth access and pay for out-of-school learning and opportunities like tutoring, and pay for it by raising retail marijuana taxes and use other existing state funds. So let me just read to you a couple of the newspaper columns on this, support and opposition. So the Boulder Daily Camera says this would help stem a widespread education gap made much worse by COVID, and do this by taking funds from the marijuana market that's experienced its best year on record with 2.2 billion in sales in 2020, a 25% increase from the previous year, and has no signs of slowing down. The money in there will continue to be there, so let's put it to good use. And in opposition, the Durango Herald says taxing pot is not a bad idea, although at some point we might risk killing the golden goose. But why not put the money straight into schools? Why create another agency? Teachers fear this is a surreptitious move to use public money for private schools, and it may be.
Interesting.
So there are quite a few in support and quite a few in opposition. As usual, there's arguments on both sides. So it takes increases the sales tax on marijuana And additionally, the retail sales tax on marijuana already places a great financial burden on low-income individuals. Some of the folks advocate also. So that's the short version. What do you all think? I wanted to see what you think.
I think that's a wonderful idea, taking money out of the marijuana sales. I mean, you look at the Green Mile on Broadway.
Is that what it's called, the Green Mile?
Yeah, it goes from about I-25 all the way up to almost Louisiana. And there is marijuana shop after marijuana shop after marijuana shop.
Mhm.
And it's gotten to where there are so many pot shops along that Green Mile is what it got nicknamed, that they have said that they will not allow any more pot shops to be put up in that area.
Mhm.
And I think
Okay.
it's a wonderful idea to stop the pot shops being built in that area. And I think it's a tremendous idea to take from the marijuana
They're doing
sales
pretty good.
and
Yeah.
put it into education of the youth.
Yeah. The
I think it's a terrible idea. I would disagree. The money should go to public schools, not private. This is funding private things. It's not funding the schools. So I totally disagree respectfully with what you're saying, but we can do a lot better. Agree, we take it away from pot, but we don't put it into private enterprises for schools.
And it's also partially funding that. It's only partially funding it from what I understanding is it's taking it from the land grant or something like this.
Yes.
So that it's, I don't know if it's good or bad. It's creating a private, it's taking the money from public and moving it over to private. I don't know if that's good or not. That's my opinion. I don't know. More research.
I didn't realize that it was taking it from public schools, putting it into private.
It is.
In that case, I've got to go back on what I said. I think it's not a good idea for them to take it out of the public schools. I think it needs to stay there
I agree.
and add more to private as well, but not take any out of the public schools.
That's kind of what the Denver Post editorial board said. They said, "We fear that unscrupulous online education providers will pounce on this as an opportunity to use public funds to offer very little in the way of actual educational progress, or even childcare for that matter. If voters do approve this sin tax, we hope that we are proven wrong, but it's a gamble that we encourage voters not to make." It's time.
I read an article that it could come back rewritten for public without taking from public and could be reconsidered in the future. Okay. As a pro-public bill versus an anti.
That happens a lot of times, doesn't it,
Yeah.
with these initiatives? They sound like a good thing on the surface, but when you dig in, they're not really constructed very well, and then they come back
Yeah.
better. Yeah, haven't you seen that, Ron? And some. Okay, all right, any other thoughts? Okay, let's go on to the next one. Prop 120 says,
Could I ask you a quick question? This is Karen. Sometimes the way these are worded, they word it opposite. So do you know the wording on this? If we don't want it to pass, do we vote no? Do you,
Blue,
The blue says, and it says,
Yes.
a yes vote on 119 will increase the retail marijuana tax and begin this new program. A no vote means the program will not be created.
okay, thank you.
That's a good point about ballots. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. I didn't realize it was going to private schools. I think that's a bad idea.
Yep. Okay, the next one. Prop 120 would reduce property taxes and authorize the state to retain 25 million in revenue above the state's Tabor spending cap for 5 years, which would otherwise be required to refund to taxpayers. So it's taking, this measure provides targeted tax relief for important sectors of Colorado's economy. Reducing property taxes for most multifamily properties may ease pressure on rents and encourage investment to address Colorado's housing shortage. In addition, lodging owners may hire and retain more employees and potentially reduce lodging rates. In support is the Denver Gazette and the Colorado Springs Gazette. They said this proposal as drafted and proposed to the public would cut assessment rates for single family homes and other kinds of property. That would save hard pressed Colorado homeowners and other property owners over $1 billion a year. In opposition is the Durango Herald, which said, what is certain is that lowering these property tax rates would harm some of our most valued services. Fire districts and libraries, for example, depend on those property tax revenues. Prop 120 is not even dressed up as a good idea. So what do you all think about that?
Oh, boy.
Reducing always sounds like a good idea to pay less taxes, but it can mean fewer services.
Well, one of the things that concerns me is that it says for the multi-fam apartment, right, apartment and lodging
Right.
owners are going to get this break. And it says potentially it will help to reduce rents, potentially. And I'm sorry, I'm very cynical towards those business owners right now. I just don't trust that out of the goodness of their hearts, they're going to pass up a profit. So that's really where I feel like there's a hole in that proposition.
I tend to agree with her. It's questionable. Property taxes really took a jump this year. And to lower them would be great, but to lower them in this manner, I think it's gonna kind of backfire on us.
Okay.
But I think there's some conflicting information. There's a blue book out there that is saying multifamily and lodging, but the actual law itself says reduce property tax assessment rate from 7.15 to 6.5% and non-residential property tax 29 to 26.4. So I think I would say we need to all research it a little bit, because don't just, you know what I mean? There's
Lots of information.
Yeah, there's conflicting information out there. They say, look at the law, not the blue book. But has anybody else done some research on this as well that dug into it? It's supposed to reduce residential property tax assessment rates, not just multi and lodging. So
Thing I've seen is the jump in property taxes for us. And we're in a multi-family condo complex. And I can't believe how much it jumped. And Bringing it down would be good, but bringing it down for the reason they want to bring it down, that's kind of scary.
Okay,
One of the things that,
let's, go
one
ahead,
of the
Jim.
things that this is unclear, it seems like we're talking about taxes. But we're really not talking about taxes, we're talking about shifting the burden
Right.
from residential to other types of taxes. And what we're not really talking about taxes here. We're talking about lowering the assessed value of the real estate. And you notice that it said rather casually that other types of taxes, other types of property are taxed at 29% of actual value. And residential is going from 7.1 to 6.5%. That means residential is already way, way down there. And then now we're going to go down there a little bit further. And I agree that what this is doing is increasing the margin for property, for multifamily property owners who are investors. They're not living in their property. This is not their domicile. This is not something, this is a person that is making money off real estate. Nothing wrong with that. But when you start comparing it to people that own apartment houses versus people that own commercial property, or retail or industrial property, the retail people are assessed at 29%. And these people would be taxed at 6.5%.
Jim, I gotta agree with you. I mean, it's, we did take a big jump in taxes. But if it's gonna take the taxes and use it like they're saying in the blue book, I don't know if I trust them.
Yeah, that's a big question. How much do we trust them to really do what these proposals say? Okay, Amendment 78 would transfer the power to appropriate funds from the state treasurer to the state legislature.
Yeah.
This measure requires all state spending to be directly allocated by the legislature. Agencies would no longer have the power to spend for things that they have normally been spending. Would disallow state agencies, public colleges and universities, such as the governor or attorney general, to spend money without a direct allocation by the state legislature. The support for this, Denver Gazette said, this should be the easiest question on the ballot. Voters who want their money used for its intended purposes should approve this to end sleazy slush funds that are being used by the agencies and others. In opposition, the Durango Herald says, think how federal transportation money might be distributed if this were decided by lawmakers, most of whom are on the Front Range.
Right.
And Colorado's highway spending involves elaborate system design, and this could be an attempt to scuttle that. It also would, the Boulder Daily Camera said, this would throw a wrench in emergency funding when you need quick action for public health, flooding, fires. This would throw it into the General Assembly, which would have to meet and discuss and argue about how these monies are to be spent when they need to be spent quickly. So you want more accountability and more legislative discussion, or do you want flexibility for the agencies to be able to do what they need to do?
Once again, it's a trust issue.
Right, I agree, Tom. What do you all think? Zoomers, what do you think?
I think two things. First of all, this is aimed at the big federal infusion of monies that have been come in. And if you start letting the legislature control where these monies go, it's going to be a whipsaw, whether it's Democrats or Republicans in control. So I personally think it's a bad idea. And just to go back to the one proposition before, Nobody, it is confusing, but nobody's talked about, look who supports a proposition and who opposes it, and you can understand it better. The Chamber of Commerce supports that one on the property taxes, okay? The teachers' unions says vote no. I think that tells you a little bit.
That's interesting.
Point, Toby.
Also, keep in mind, the legislature is only officially in session between January and May, unless a special session is called. And even with strong support, it takes time to get something through the legislature. So that would definitely cripple the ability of agencies, CDOT,
Right.
unemployment, healthcare to respond
health.
quickly.
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna affect RTD and
Lots of things, yeah.
I do.
Okay, I want us to have plenty of time to talk about Mr. Biden. Those are, I hope, some useful tips on those three propositions. Any comments on your local races? Anything interesting going on? School districts are always interesting, and mine in Douglas County, it's the conservatives versus the liberals.
Yeah.
And even in our Castle Pines mayor's race, it's kind of a conservative versus a liberal, and getting nasty in that one.
It's got nasty in
Yeah.
ours too, yeah.
Is it in yours too?
Yeah, it's
So,
so,
yeah.
our District 1 Centennial. And there's a fight right now going on social media about either picking the black man or the white woman.
Oh,
And,
okay.
the white woman is a person of privilege and Republican, and the black man is neither of those. And it's there's yard signs now, just about everybody's yard.
Wow.
For
Yeah.
one or the other.
Yep, okay. Okay, let's jump in and talk about Joe Biden, how he's doing. And I'll start this off with talking about the poll numbers, as whether you like them or not. Some kind of gauge on how people think Joe Biden is doing as president. His poll numbers currently are the lowest in 40 years for any president except Trump. And 45% approve of his performance and 48% of Americans not at the moment. Washington Post says Democrats are rightly worried that Biden's has poor job approval ratings. A closer look shows independents show at the ratings among independents show Democrats should be even more worried than they are. His overall ratings are bad enough. 45% approve, 48% disapprove. President's declining ratings are brought on by his stalled domestic agenda, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the southern border crisis, and the unchecked surge of progressivism, as the Washington Post calls it. Among independents, however, Biden is about as unpopular as Trump was at this stage of his presidency. An average of only 39% of independents approved of Biden's performance in 3 polls that were due recently. So that's a little concerning, and he knows that right now, of course. And he's been saying that to legislators, we need to get my approval ratings up and everybody's, so that's why we need to get these social spending packages approved and show people we are doing something. Okay, before we go on, I want to just do a couple of biographical things about Joe Biden. There's a picture of him from high school, 78 years old. He's the oldest president, first to have a female vice president, and the second Catholic after John Kennedy. At high school, he was not a good student, but he was president of his class the junior and senior years, and he earned a bachelor's degree in Delaware with a double major in history and political science. We know that he still has a stutter, which has improved from his early 20s. He did it by reciting poetry before a mirror and really struggled with that and has done a great job of overcoming it. But it did show up a little in the debates when he was quite nervous. In '68, he earned a Juris Doctor law degree from Syracuse. He ranked 76th in his class out of 85, but he did it. And then he obtained 5 student deferments at a time when most draftees were sent to the Vietnam War. It was based on a medical deferment of having asthma as a teenager. Just a little on his history, elected to Senate from 72 at age 29. His platform was on withdrawing from Vietnam, civil rights, mass transit, equitable transportation, and healthcare. We know just a few weeks after the election, his wife and one-year-old daughter were killed in an automobile accident. And he thought of leaving the Senate at that time. He had just arrived there. But he went on to serve ever since, and he was chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and specialized in foreign policy. He also chaired the Judiciary Committee and dealt with drug policy, crime, and civil liberties. As president, his first thing was really signing a series of executive orders that addressed the pandemic and reversed Trump's administration policies, such as Paris Climate Accord and deferred action for childhood arrivals. We know he's got a reputation for misspeaking in public, although he tries the best he can. His latest was on Taiwan last week. He said something about we would defend Taiwan. And then the administration clarified that we're not sure. And there was a famous quote that he said to people in public appearances, "You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier," which he sees as a funny thing, and a lot of folks don't. But the columnist from the Macon Report, I thought, had a very good comment. He said, "What it takes to be a good president is not demonstrated by being good at answering rapid-fire questions on the debate stage. What it takes is the ability to listen, think through problems, appoint good advisors, make decisions, and solve problems. Be ethical and honest, and work with all kinds of people. In that, I think Biden could be a wonderful president." So I think that's the way a lot of us see that too. And finally, as I was just doing some looking on the internet, there was an interesting Baltimore Sun column during the election that said, "I'm settling for Biden." Lots of us are settling for Biden. He's not the best or the brightest that we have in America for president, but he is not Mr. Trump. And he can do, as they said, a very good job. This choice this year is a choice between lesser of two evils, Joe Biden's and his past, or Donald Trump and his present. So that's just a few things there. Let's look first at the Afghanistan pullout, and I want to hear what you thought about that, because that was probably his biggest foreign policy event to date. The New York Times or Reuters reported at the time, less than 40% of Americans approved of his handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And 3/4 of Americans wanted some US forces to remain until all Americans got out. Jake Sullivan, Biden's national security advisor, said in August that the administration was clear-eyed about the Taliban takeover, but did not anticipate it would happen at the speed it was. Even many Biden supporters were perplexed about why, if they knew this was a possibility, the administration didn't get people out sooner. And General Milley, the top US military officer at the time, said that he favored keeping several thousand troops in the country to prevent the collapse of Kabul and a rapid takeover of the Taliban. So what do you think? Jim?
I think looking over your shoulder or at what you should have done or could have done is always 2020. And you can see perfectly what you should have done. Looking in advance is the difficult thing. History has shown, or most historians have reported, that Harry Truman was probably one of the best presidents that this country ever had. All of the things that he did, I mean, you can go through a laundry list of things that Harry Truman did, including ending World War II quickly, and integrating the military and things like that. very unpopular things at the time. And his ratings were in the toilet. And yet history has shown that this man was courageous enough to complete FDR's agenda and to move the country out of World War II in a very positive way. The United Nations, all the other things that happened. We sat in this country for 20 years fighting a war that was a disaster on every scale, on every way that you look at it. It was not, we were not accomplishing a thing, and we were spending our wealth enormously. We were using our young people to go over there, and they were being injured, and their injuries were going to last us for the rest of their lives. All of these things were ongoing, and Joe ended it. Now, he had faulty information that he relied upon. I don't think there's any question that any other president that had made the decision would have had the same problem. All of the intelligence that he had indicated that this was going to be a 6 months takeover by the.
Wouldn't happen that fast.
And for it to happen that quickly was just unbelievable.
That's a
And
good
then
summary.
what happened was that the pullout was rescued in a way that an awful lot of people got out of there that they didn't think were going to be possible. So I
100,000.
think I think
Yeah.
5 years after Biden is out of office, history is going to say
Yeah.
that was a good action.
I think he
That
was on the
that we finally got stuck out of the mud, and we're gone on down the road. And I think it'll be from both sides of the aisle.
I think you summed it up pretty well. Zoomers, what do you think? Anybody want to weigh in?
Yes, I'd like to weigh in. Jim, that's a great point you make. You know, Karen and I listened to, while we were driving back and forth to Ohio, 3 different times, twice, well, all the presidents. So the history of the presidents, and that's really true. Truman only had a 45% approval rating. And look at the Marshall Plan. Look at, he dropped the atomic bomb to end World War II. So look, I mean, you could take some of that stuff. He didn't have a great approval rating, but he accomplished a ton. How do you get out of Afghanistan without, I mean, like you said, you could always look at it, hindsight's 2020. So I don't know, he could have done a better job of doing that. Now we look back and say that, but we look at other presidents and they did the same thing, if not more or worse. You know, look at, he dropped an atomic bomb. Oh my God. Okay. Innocent people died. I mean, but it ended the war like now. Okay. But was interesting. It's an interesting dilemma. Is he doing a good job? Manchin is proving to be
His nemesis.
And if he can accomplish anything with a conservative Democrat, good luck.
We're gonna,
He has to figure it out.
Yeah.
let's go over to the other seemingly big foreign policy issue, and that's on the southern border of Mexico. President Biden spoke with the Mexican president back in January, and they talked about all these things. In January, Biden introduced an immigration bill that made a path to citizenship for 11 million undocumented people living in the US, but we know it didn't go anywhere. Refugee admissions, Biden has signed executive order aimed at rescinding the Trump immigration policies and a review of Afghan and Iraqi applications for visas. He also reversed a 2019 executive order restricting settlement. So we know generally where he has been on those, and the problems right now with big numbers of people coming across the border illegally, because it seems now that America's opened the floodgates and that we're not going to be sending them back, even though that's not the exact real situation. We are sending people back. The Haitians that were underneath the bridge, many airplanes full of those folks got sent back to Haiti. So it's a tough thing. What do you think? Are we doing the right thing? We are giving the right public signals on immigration at the southern border or not?
Why would we think Biden can solve it? Nobody has solved it in years and years and years. Why would we think, it's gonna be solved in less than a year?
Yeah. Of course, the conservative talk shows are saying that, that Trump had the flow stemmed, stopped with his policy, and that's the way we should have kept it. Because we can't afford to have millions and millions of everybody coming across the border. That's their argument, of course.
Well,
I think it's really important if we step back and get maybe a global view and understand or try to understand why people are flocking to our borders. If we are unable as a human race to figure out how to handle climate change, it's only going to get worse. And we may be the ones knocking on Canada's borders. So the reason that people are fleeing where they're fleeing is something that the entire globe needs to address.
It's not just our issue, it's a global issue,
Yes, it
migration,
is.
correct?
Mhm.
It's happening all over the world.
Yes, Europe really is
Yes.
struggling with,
Yes.
trying to integrate so many into their cultures also. Zoomers, any comments on immigration before we move on to domestic policy? I know we're going fast today, but I want to cover everything we can about foreign and domestic. Okay, of course, any one of these things we could go back and spend an hour on.
I wanted to say that it appears to me that Trump's wall is more than a physical possibility. That the wall separates the political ideology of the left and the right. That building a wall, in my opinion, because I'm on the left side of the issue, building a wall is counterproductive to the way the world works anymore. It's like China's wall. China's wall was built in antiquity, but our wall is built at a time that globalism is a fact. But people that believe that a wall will solve our problems believe in the actual wall. And people that don't believe that walls are going to that we can't separate ourselves from the rest of humanity.
We should find other ways to solve our problems.
So the wall becomes a metaphor, becomes a defining point as to how you view our ability to solve problems.
That's a good point, Jim. I like that. Okay, let's go on to domestic policy. I hadn't read much until this week, really, to try and clarify what's going on with all this stuff, with these social spending things. But here's the way I understand it. There are two parallel bills going on right now. One is on infrastructure. The Senate's already approved a $1 trillion package to improve and modernize the nation's aging infrastructure. And they did that through a 69-30 vote. And the legislature must now pass the House, but it's being held up by the progressives who won't vote for it until the separate social spending program is also approved. On the yes vote in the Senate, it included Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, and 18 of his party, even though Donald Trump's tried to derail it. The measure has not been passed by the House yet because of 100-member progressive caucus said they won't vote on it until the other ones pass too. The measure would provide $65 billion to expand high-speed internet, $110 billion for roads, bridges, and other projects, $25 billion for airports, and the most funding for Amtrak in its history. It would also renew infrastructure and other transportation programs. So be the biggest improvement, especially in roads and bridges, that we've had in decades. The second part here is the big social spending bill that we all have heard about that started out at 3.5 trillion, but that has now been reduced to 1.8 so they can try and get it passed. What's in this one? It is aimed at fighting climate change. That's the handout I gave to you. A lot of things in there on climate change for new renewable sources of energy. But it also calls for free and universal preschool, 1 million affordable housing units. And Biden says that somewhere along the way, we stopped investing in ourselves. We can't be competitive in the 21st century if we continue this slide. But the things that have been left out, Joe Manchin was pivotal on opposing it. And we know because the vote is so close that he has power at this time, and he made some things be dropped out. Paid family leave was removed entirely, a blow to progressives and American voters who hoped the US would join other countries in providing paid time off for new parents. Also, a plan for lower prescription drug prices was slashed, which made the AARP furious. And I've got emails from that. And in fact, I responded back to my legislator and said, why can't that be included? What does Biden say? We will pay for these things. Biden on Thursday made the case for the spending plan was fiscally responsible and fully paid for. The plan promises to offset the cost with $2 trillion in revenue, a 15% minimum tax on profits of large firms, additional 5% tax on income greater than 10 million, and 3% tax on income of 25 million. With increased enforcement, cut down on tax evasion, large corporations. So once again, trying to plug the loopholes that corporations use on that kind of thing. And Biden said on Thursday, just this last Thursday, with the Democrats he met with, his presidency is at stake. They have to rally behind this spending bill because nothing less than his presidency is at stake. I don't think it's hyperbole. He said on Thursday as he unveiled this proposal. The House and Senate majorities and my presidency will be determined by what happens next week. And this is the final plan, the final push to do that. So 2 parallel bills, infrastructure and social spending, which includes a lot of the climate change things like new energy sources, which Manchin, the opponent, didn't like because he is from Kentucky and has a lot of ties to the coal industry. What do you think about that? Questions?
Any from West Virginia?
West Virginia.
Or West Virginia, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry.
I know it's off the table, but explain to me the child, it's off the table now, but the paid leave.
12 weeks of paid leave for new parents.
They knocked it down to 4 weeks and now it's gone entirely.
Now it's gone until.
I guess I'm just coming from, we didn't have it. So why have it? I guess is what I'm trying to understand. I know they're not gonna have it, but what's the purpose?
There's more working women have
Now. Okay.
Our generation, when we had children, I was not working.
Right, exactly. Okay,
That's pure and simple.
okay,
And if you
all right.
compare it to other developed countries, we're just pathetic in that regard. I mean, it's, for us to think that it's such a gift is sort of unique to the United States, as I understand it, compared to other countries. It's kind of an established.
We're one of 8 countries that don't do that. They don't provide 12 weeks of maternity leave for highly developed countries. So it's a rarity nowadays that we're not doing it. Why?
But it impacts us. Biden had spoken about it to be competitive on the global market.
And why wouldn't we?
Where did
Yeah.
that money come from? Did it have to come from the employers?
Yeah, they have to pay.
Okay, so then how does that help them sustain their business? I guess I'm coming at
You're being the devil's advocate further.
I guess I've lived with you too long. Yeah, but I'm wondering about that, you know,
would
I mean,
cost
it
companies
helps
more, but-
one side, but it doesn't,
Right.
you know, and I mean,
That's life.
yeah.
Well, doesn't
okay.
it? Because would it be better
Employees.
for a woman who is a very productive
Right,
member of your employee staff
right, to keep her.
to keep
To keep
her
her, right,
than to hire somebody, train them? You're
Yeah.
gonna spend as much doing that as keeping
Yeah.
somebody.
yeah, that's. true.
And ultimately, we say we like children.
Yeah,
So
right.
would we not ultimately think that a child would be best off in the care of their own parent for those
Right.
early weeks?
right, yeah,
So.
yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I come at it from two things.
Mhm.
I didn't have it,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so
But
I'm
did
thinking,
you
and I
have,
made
did
it.
you have aunts or sisters
Oh,
or
yeah.
grandparents that could help?
You? Yeah, I did, or there were
And we're
times
so
when I just
humble.
had to stay home and just bite the bullet, you know, and so,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
in job security, you know, that was tough, you
right,
know,
it
so
is.
I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah.
it just made me wonder, you know, I mean,
But
Good to
wouldn't
look at
we,
both
and wouldn't we
sides.
want it to be better for other people?
Isn't
Yeah.
there a
too?
threshold about how the size of the business? Because I know as an employer,
Yeah,
in our small business, there's no way we could have done it.
right.
Yeah.
right.
It's like 100 employee, I mean, it's pretty high threshold
Yeah.
that have to offer this. And so those people could probably have enough people to absorb those jobs. for the
Right.
board.
A lot more
There's
details
a lot
than
more
we're
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah,
revealing
yeah,
here, of
yeah,
course.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
let me, we've got 7 minutes left. Let me share with
Oh
you
my
just a
gosh.
couple more things.
Yeah. Another session.
Another session will do, but I want to just for a minute tell about these two folks who are Democrats, but who are opposing Biden's plans, and that's Manchin and Sinema
Yeah.
from Arizona. And just tell you, because I didn't know much about them, so I wanted to do just a little research and find out about that, and then we can discuss them. What I found was a story this week that said Manchin has made millions from coal. CNN said West Virginia, Joe Manchin's longstanding financial ties are bringing fresh scrutiny. His vote is crucial because of the 50-50 tie. It says he has holdings valued between 1 million and 5 million in Enter Systems Incorporated, the coal brokerage firm he founded, according to his most recent financial disclosure forms. Last year, he made more than $491,000 from those holdings. That's more than twice his $174,000 annual Senate salary. This lobbyist says Manchin is a walking conflict of interest. What makes him more troubling is he's the 50th Democratic senator, which gives him enormous sway over climate policy. But the debate over Manchin's coal interest also highlights the lax congressional ethics rules that allow federal lawmakers to regulate industries in which they have a financial interest.
Right.
In addition to his pivotal role in domestic policy bill, Manchin helped set U.S. energy policy as chairman of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. He served on that panel since 2010, and he won a special election of Robert Byrd. So that, I thought that was quite interesting. Also, his grown daughter has been CEO of the pharmaceutical company that raised EpiPen prices by 500%. Speaking to Bloomberg News in 2016, Manchin praised his daughter, Heather Brecht, as a compassionate and generous person. She became the target of derision that summer after a 500% increase in the cost of the EpiPens. The drug, which cost around $100 in 2009, shot up to $600. The move sparked outrage from parents whose children rely on the drug, including Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar. And there's a little story on her. Okay, and here's the other one. Here's the Sinema. Here's the lady from Arizona. Politico magazine says at the national level, Sinema's brand of politics isn't so much progressive as it is raw confusion. When Saturday Night Live parodied her, it said that she was a wine drinking bisexual triathlete who knows what America wants. Chaos isn't a bad way to describe her impact on Washington right now. She's famously unclear about her reasons for voting the way she does. What exactly she stands for appears to be less important than her own ambition. For example, she voted against Donald Trump's massive tax cuts, but now refuses to raise taxes on the wealthy and corporations. She says she's tackling climate change, but then she does things in the other direction too. Progressive activists are furious with her, and local groups are already threatening to fund a primary challenge against her. So that's seems to be the image that's out there of this person too. What do you think? Zoomers, had you heard of these two before and some of those things?
I think they're both enjoying the attention they're getting.
Seriously. Platform that they have.
It gives them a platform.
Yeah, and who gives them that?
And they
Their
both
power.
talked about maybe I should be independent, but they continue to hold power whichever way they go.
Well, you know, Steve, I could respect that they don't want certain things, right? And we all have our opinions and we need to respect them, I think. But with Manchin, he's just opposing to oppose, it seems to me. I've heard him say in interviews, well, 1.5 trillion just seems to be a good amount. You can't get him to say like
What they should take out.
reconcile it. Tell me, okay, give me the, what amounts are you taking out? I mean,
And what?
don't just grab an amount out of the sky and say 1.5 trillion when the previous Republican president raised the debt $7.8 trillion, but interesting.
Make his kind of money, you can do that. I mean, it's like dropping numbers.
And the interesting irony in West Virginia, for every dollar they contribute, they get $2 back as far as social support programs too. So interesting irony there.
Yes.
It's a very needy state, probably our neediest state.
West Virginia is losing population. It's lost one of its congressional seats. It's one of the poorest states in the union. It's almost the opioid capital of the United States. It's a state with a lot of problems.
So you would think that he would, the help for his own constituents, you would think
Is
that.
that a requirement of?
I know.
Yeah.
You would think that.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be a representative government, right? Anyway, just.
But he's also come from the coal industry and protecting that,
But that's
obviously.
not.
We're gonna wrap up here in just a
The thing
minute.
that worries me is that two senators are able to pull the teeth
I know.
on having a forward-moving climate policy that allows the United States to be a leader in addressing climate change.
Right.
And so two people are withholding this thing. To me, it's a disaster. And to invest two people, I don't care whether they're really just terrific people, if they are allowed to control this whole thing, to me, it's just so abhorrent that I can't even conceive of it.
It's a reflection on our Senate setup, where 50% of the US population resides in the 9 most populous states. So 50% of the US population has 82 senators. The other 50% has 18 senators.
It's a broken system. Yep.
One issue we didn't touch on at all today, you did an outstanding job, very helpful, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Was the management of the pandemic. And that's what brought Biden into office, if you recall. That was the big issue. But for another time, perhaps.
Yeah.
How is he doing with
That's a
managing
good
the pandemic?
Yes, yes.
One other thing, I know I've spoken a lot. I like to step back and look at big picture stuff too. And it seems to me that conservatives have really won the word and labeling contest. If we say that this is about Biden's presidency, right? actually, his agenda is about our country being able to move forward. It's about what is our nation going to do to help ourselves become and be productive and move forward. It's about the nation.
As
It's not
opposed to
just
making
about
sure
him. It's
great
not just a
again.
political thing for him.
Yeah.
It's about all of us. It could, absolutely, well, it will. So we're allowing that label of, oh, it's about his presidency. No, it's not. We need to do a better job about saying what this really is about and how it's going to help everybody. Anyway.
I gotta put in a plug. I'm gonna be doing a lesson in a few weeks. Steve will set a date on Fiona Hill's book,
Oh,
new book.
good, yes.
And she talks about opportunity
Mhm.
and how opportunity has decreased for people in US, Britain, Russia, and what needs to be done to bring back opportunity. And a lot of people that are bitching the loudest about how tough things are
Mhm.
don't want to spend any money to address them.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Steve Doug here. What was the group's decision on the proposal 120? Did the group ever get to a point where they voted yay, nay on that one?
We didn't do that, Doug. We just talked about the pros and the cons.
Yeah.
Have a good luck.
No. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Jim, good to see you.
Yeah. Hi, Jim Watson. Good to see you.
Hi, glad to be here.
Okay, well, we have to wrap up. Good to see everybody. Next week, Ron is going to do a presentation on
The renaissance of nuclear power. And what contributions it can make to clean energy.
nuclear power and clean energy. Okay. Take care, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
If only we could solve it all, right?
Yeah, and all